A black single father. A locked office. 2 in the morning. His female boss stood so close he could feel her breath. No warning, no written report, just 4 words whispered like a secret or a trap. "Wanna look?" The apartment was quiet when Darius pushed open the door at 5:30 in the morning. He expected darkness, the soft hum of the refrigerator, maybe the distant sound of his mother-in-law snoring in the back room. Instead, he found Maddox. The boy sat on the couch with a glass of milk in his hands. The milk had gone warm hours ago. His 7-year-old eyes tracked his father's movement from the doorway to the kitchen, watching him the way children watch when they sense something wrong but cannot name it. "Dad, you okay?" Darius set his bag down and forced a smile. "Yeah, buddy. Why are you up so early?" "I had a dream you didn't come home." The words hit harder than they should have. Darius crossed the room and knelt in front of his son, taking the glass from his small hands and setting it aside. Maddox looked tired. The kind of tired that came from fighting sleep all night because fear kept winning. "I'm always coming home," Darius said. "You know that." "Promise?" "Promise." He pulled Maddox into a hug, feeling the boy's thin arms wrap around his neck. Over his son's shoulder, Darius stared at the wall at the framed photo of Maddox's mother gone 3 years now, her smile frozen in a moment that felt like another lifetime. He had made that same promise to her once, that he would always come home, that nothing would break their family apart. She died anyway. Cancer did not care about promises. Now it was just the 2 of them, plus Grandma Lorraine in the back room, plus a job that paid well enough to keep the lights on, but demanded pieces of his soul in return. "Go back to sleep," Darius whispered. "I'll make pancakes when you wake up." Maddox pulled back, studying his father's face with that unsettling perception children sometimes possessed. "You look worried." "I'm just tired." "About work?" Darius hesitated. "Yeah, about work." The boy nodded slowly, accepting the half-truth because he had learned not to push. He slid off the couch and padded toward his bedroom, stopping at the door to look back. "If someone's being mean to you," Maddox said, "you should tell them to stop. That's what you told me." Then he was gone, leaving Darius alone in the living room with those words hanging in the air like an accusation. If only it were that simple. Meridian Systems occupied a windowless building on the edge of the industrial district, the kind of place that looked abandoned from the outside but hummed with activity beneath its surface. Data processing, they called it. Government contracts, corporate security information management for clients whose names never appeared on any public record. Darius had worked the night shift for 4 years. He knew every corridor, every security checkpoint, every camera angle. He had learned to move through the building like a ghost present, but unremarkable, competent, but invisible. That invisibility was intentional. In a place like this, attention meant danger. Questions meant suspicion. And for a black man in a facility full of people who had never questioned their own authority being forgettable, was the only form of armor that worked. Tonight, though, something felt different. Darius noticed it within the first hour of his shift. Derek Mullins, the IT team leader with the perpetual smirk, and the corner office he had not earned, kept appearing in sections of the building where he had no business being. Twice near the server room, once outside the archive vault. Each time he glanced at Darius with an expression that seemed almost expectant. Then there were the system logs. Darius caught it during a routine check timestamps that did not match access records that showed activity on accounts during hours when those users had been off-site. Small discrepancies, the kind that most people would overlook. He was not most people. He flagged nothing, reported nothing. Because in 4 years at Meridian he had learned the first rule of survival: never be the one who raises the alarm. That person always became the problem regardless of what they had actually found. But he watched, and as the hours passed, he became aware of something else, someone watching him. Kara Hartwell, She was the senior operations manager, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a reputation for seeing trouble before it arrived. In 4 years, Darius had spoken to her exactly twice. Both times were brief, professional, forgettable. She did not socialize with employees. She did not make small talk in the break room. She existed in a separate sphere, untouchable and unknowable, like a statue in a museum that everyone admired, but no one approached. Tonight she stood at the observation window above the main floor, her silhouette backlit by the glow of monitors. She was looking directly at him. Darius kept his head down and continued working, but he felt her gaze like a weight on his shoulders, heavy, deliberate, impossible to ignore. At 1:47 in the morning, his workstation chimed with an internal message. "My office, now." No signature, no explanation, just those 3 words from an account he recognized as hers. Darius stared at the screen for a long moment, his pulse beginning to climb. In 4 years, no one had ever been summoned to Kara Hartwell's office alone. He thought about Maddox, about the promise he had made just hours ago. Then he stood and walked toward the elevator. The elevator climbed in silence. Darius watched the floor numbers change each one, bringing him closer to a conversation he could not predict and did not want. His reflection stared back at him from the polished metal doors, a man in his mid-30s wearing the same neutral expression he had perfected over years of navigating spaces where his presence was tolerated, but never truly welcomed. The doors opened on the executive level. Kara Hartwell's office sat at the end of a corridor lined with frosted glass panels. No windows to the outside world, no decorations on the walls, just clean lines and cold efficiency like everything else in this building. He knocked once. "Come in." Her voice was calm, too calm. Darius entered and found her standing near a wall-mounted monitor, her back to him. The door clicked shut behind him, and he heard the lock engage a soft sound that sent ice through his veins. She did not turn around immediately. Instead, she let the silence stretch, filling the room with a tension that pressed against his chest like a physical weight. When she finally faced him, her expression revealed nothing. No warmth, no hostility, just observation, as if she were studying an equation and waiting to see if the numbers would balance. "Sit down." Darius remained standing. "I'd rather not, if it's all the same to you." Something flickered across her face, surprise perhaps, or respect. It vanished before he could identify it. "Fair enough." She moved closer, not threatening but deliberate, each step calculated to reduce the distance between them without triggering his defenses. It did not work. Every muscle in his body had already tensed. "You've worked here 4 years," she said. "In all that time, you've never filed a complaint. Never asked for a transfer, never once drawn attention to yourself." Darius said nothing. These were not questions. Most people would call that professionalism. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something faint and expensive. "I call it survival instinct." "Is there a point to this?" Her lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "Wanna look?" The words hung in the air between them, loaded with implications he could not ignore. His mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. A setup, a test, some kind of twisted game designed to give them a reason to remove him. He took a step backward, his voice hardening. "I don't know what you're implying, but I think I should leave." Kara did not move. "If I wanted to destroy you, I wouldn't need to be in the same room." The statement landed like a punch. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. In a place like Meridian Power operated from a distance, accusations appeared in inboxes, evidence materialized in databases. Careers ended with a signature on a document that the victim never saw coming. "Then what do you want?" She turned and walked to the monitor, pressing a button on its edge. The screen flickered to life, filling with images and text that made no sense at first glance. "Come here." Against every instinct screaming at him to leave, Darius approached. And as the information on the screen came into focus, his blood turned to ice. Emails. Dozens of them, all sent from an account bearing his name. Each one contained attachments files, marked classified datasets labeled confidential communications that should never have left the building. The timestamps showed late-night transmissions over the past 3 months, always during his shifts. "I didn't send these." "I know." She pressed another button. The screen changed to System Logs access records, showing his credentials entering restricted servers, downloading files he had never touched, copying information he had no reason to possess. "This isn't possible. Someone altered these records." "Keep watching." A third screen appeared. An internal investigation report dated 2 days ago, marked preliminary but devastating in its conclusions. His name appeared on every page. Suspect. Primary person of interest. Recommended for immediate suspension pending further review. Darius felt the floor shifting beneath him. His entire career, his entire life had been rewritten by someone he had never met for reasons he could not understand. "Why are you showing me this?" Kara turned to face him, and for the first time he saw something behind her professional mask. Not sympathy. Something older. Something that looked like recognition. "Because they're going to come for you. Within 72 hours, everything you see here will become official. You'll be suspended, then terminated, then prosecuted. Your name will be attached to one of the largest data breaches in this company's history. I didn't do any of this. That doesn't matter. The evidence says you did. And evidence is all that matters in rooms like this." Darius's hands had curled into fists at his sides. Anger and fear battled for dominance, neither willing to surrender. "Who's behind this? Who would go through this much trouble to frame someone like me?" The question seemed to amuse her, though her expression remained flat. "Someone like you. That's exactly the point. You're perfect for this, Darius. No powerful connections. No family with lawyers on retainer. A single father with a young son and no safety net. If you go down, no one fights for you. No one investigates. The case closes, the board moves on, and whoever actually stole that data walks away clean." He wanted to argue. Wanted to tell her she was wrong, that justice still existed somewhere, that the truth would come out eventually. But he had lived 34 years as a black man in America. He knew exactly how this story ended when the system decided someone needed to take the fall. "What do you want from me?" She studied him for a long moment before answering. "I want you to understand what you're facing, and I want you to know that I've seen this before." "Seen what?" "This exact playbook, the fabricated evidence, the convenient scapegoat, the investigation that moves too fast for anyone to question." Her voice dropped, losing some of its edge. 8 years ago, I watched someone I cared about get destroyed by the same people using the same tactics. He didn't survive it. Darius searched her face for signs of deception. He found none. Only the weight of a wound that had never fully healed. "Why tell me? Why not just let it happen?" "Because last time I didn't act fast enough. I told myself it wasn't my fight. I convinced myself there was nothing I could do." She held his gaze with an intensity that bordered on uncomfortable. "I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me help you survive." The offer hung between them, a lifeline thrown into dark water, impossible to verify but equally impossible to ignore. "I have a son. I know. If this goes wrong, he loses everything. I know that too." Darius stood in silence, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on his shoulders. He thought about Maddox waiting for him at home, about the promise he had made just hours ago. "How do I know you're not part of this?" Kara's expression did not change. "You don't." She turned back to the screen, dismissing him without a word. Darius left her office with his head spinning and his heart pounding against his ribs. The elevator ride down felt like a descent into something he could not name, a darkness that had been waiting for him all along. He did not know if Kara Hartwell was his ally or his enemy. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. His life, would never be the same. Sleep refused to come. Darius lay in bed with his eyes fixed on the ceiling, watching shadows shift as car headlights swept past the window. His mind replayed everything Kara had shown him. The emails he never sent, the access logs he never created, the investigation report that would end his career and possibly his freedom. 60 hours remained before everything became official. The clock on his nightstand read 6:15 in the morning. He had been home for less than an hour, and already the walls felt like they were closing in. He thought about calling a lawyer, but dismissed the idea immediately. Lawyers cost money he did not have, and even if he found one willing to work pro bono, what would he tell them? That his boss showed him evidence of a conspiracy in a locked room at 2 in the morning, that she claimed to have seen this same pattern 8 years ago with someone who did not survive. It sounded insane. It sounded like the paranoid ramblings of a man already looking for excuses. And yet, Darius had spent his entire adult life learning to read situations to sense danger before it materialized. That instinct had kept him alive through neighborhoods where the wrong look could get you killed through job interviews, where he knew the decision had been made before he walked in the door, through a marriage cut short by disease and a grief that still lingered like smoke in an empty room. His instincts told him Kara was not lying. But his instincts also told him that trusting her could be the biggest mistake of his life. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. The door cracked open, and Maddox peered through the gap with sleepy eyes. "Dad, you're still awake. Just thinking, buddy. Go back to sleep." Maddox did not move. Instead, he pushed the door wider and padded across the carpet in bare feet, climbing onto the bed without asking permission. He curled up against Darius's side, his small body radiating warmth. "You look scared," Maddox said quietly. "I'm not scared. You look like you were when Mom was sick." The words cut deeper than any accusation could have. Darius wrapped an arm around his son and pulled him closer, breathing in the familiar scent of children's shampoo and laundry detergent. "Something's happening at work," he admitted. "Something I don't understand yet." "Is someone being mean to you?" "Something like that." Maddox was quiet for a moment, processing this information with the seriousness that 7-year-olds sometimes possessed. "Then you gotta stand up for yourself, Dad. You always tell me that." Darius held his son tighter, but in his mind he knew standing up for yourself required knowing who you were standing against. And right now, he could not see his enemy's face. Maddox fell asleep within minutes, his breathing evening out into the rhythm of childhood dreams. Darius held him until the sun rose, watching the light creep across the ceiling, and knowing that every hour brought him closer to a reckoning he could not escape. The next night at Meridian Systems felt different. Darius moved through his shift with heightened awareness, cataloging every interaction, every glance, every word spoken in his presence. He noticed things he might have missed before, the way conversations stopped when he approached, the way certain colleagues avoided eye contact, the way Derek Mullins watched him from across the floor with an expression that bordered on anticipation. Something had changed. The machinery of his destruction was already in motion, and everyone knew it, except the man marked for sacrifice. At 11:43, Victor Haynes appeared on the operations floor. The COO rarely descended from the executive level. His presence signaled either celebration or catastrophe, and no one could remember the last time Meridian had anything to celebrate. Haynes moved through the workspace like a politician working a crowd, handshakes, shoulder pats, brief words of encouragement delivered with a smile that never reached his eyes. He was a man in his early 50s with silver hair and the kind of tailored suit that cost more than most employees made in a month. When he reached Darius's station, he extended his hand with practiced warmth. "Coleman Wright, how long have you been with us?" "4 years, sir." "4 years?" Haynes nodded approvingly. "That's dedication. We appreciate people who show up and do the work without making waves." The words sounded like a compliment. They felt like a threat. "Keep up the good work," Haynes said, clapping Darius on the shoulder before moving on to the next station. Darius watched him go, his skin crawling where the man's hand had touched him. He understood now. The predator had come to inspect the trap before it snapped shut. 2 hours later, Darius found Kara in a corridor near the archive vault. She did not seem surprised to see him. If anything, she had been expecting this confrontation, positioning herself in a location where security cameras had limited coverage. "You knew Haynes would come tonight," Darius said. It was not a question. "He always visits before they make their move. It's a ritual. He likes to look his victims in the eye." "I'm not his victim yet." "No," Kara agreed. "Not yet." Darius stepped closer, keeping his voice low. "I need to know why. Out of everyone in this building, why did you choose to warn me? What do you actually want?" She studied him with those sharp, unreadable eyes. "I told you. I've seen this before. That's not enough. I have a son. I can't afford to trust someone just because they feel something." The words landed harder than he intended. Something shifted in Kara's expression, a crack in the armor she wore so carefully. 8 years ago, she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, there was a man named David Mitchell. He worked at a company called Axiom Dynamics. Same industry, same type of contracts, same culture of disposing people when convenient. She turned away slightly, as if looking at Darius while speaking these words was too difficult. David was brilliant, ethical, the kind of person who actually believed in doing the right thing. And someone decided he made a perfect scapegoat for a scandal that reached all the way to the board of directors. What happened to him? They destroyed everything. His career, his reputation, his finances. By the time the investigation cleared him, which it never did officially, he had lost his home, his marriage, and most of his will to live. Her voice hardened. He killed himself 3 months after they terminated him. I found his body. Darius felt the weight of her words settle into his chest. You loved him. I was going to marry him. The silence between them stretched thin, filled with ghosts neither could see, but both could feel. I watched it happen, Kara continued. I told myself there was nothing I could do. I convinced myself that getting involved would only make things worse. And by the time I realized how wrong I was, he was already gone. She turned back to face him, and for the first time Darius saw something raw beneath her composure, not weakness, but the kind of strength that came from surviving unbearable loss. After David died, I spent years tracking the people responsible. That's how I found my way to Meridian. The executives who destroyed him, they trained Victor Haynes. Same network, same methods, same belief that certain people exist only to be sacrificed when convenient. The connection clicked into place. Kara had not stumbled into this job. She had infiltrated it. You've been waiting for this, Darius said slowly. Waiting for Haynes to make a move so you could take him down. I've been waiting for proof. And now I have it, or I will if you help me get it. How do I know you won't throw me under the bus the moment it benefits you? Her expression did not waver. You don't. But right now I'm the only one who knows what's coming, and I'm the only one willing to help you fight back. The following night, with less than 28 hours remaining, Kara led Darius to a storage room on the building's lowest level, a space filled with decommissioned servers and forgotten equipment. No cameras, no monitoring. The perfect place to plan a war. She spread a series of documents across a dusty table, each one representing months of careful observation and secret collection. Victor Haynes orchestrated everything, she began. 6 months ago, there was a data breach. Client information from 3 major corporations was extracted and sold to competitors overseas. The leak came from executive-level access that only a handful of people possess, including Haynes. Especially Haynes. He's been hemorrhaging money for years. Bad investments, expensive divorce, the kind of lifestyle that costs more than even a COO salary can support. The breach was his solution, quick cash untraceable if done correctly. Darius studied the documents. financial records, communication logs, timestamp analyses that showed suspicious activity concentrated around times when Haynes had exclusive building access. If you have all this, why not go public? Why not take it to the board yourself? Kara's laugh held no humor. Because the board includes 3 people who owe their positions to Haynes directly. Because the company's legal team would bury any accusation before it reached a courtroom. Because people like me don't get the benefit of the doubt when we make claims against people like him. She tapped a finger on one of the documents. Derek Mullins is his tool. He handles the technical side, altering logs, creating false trails, making evidence appear where it shouldn't exist. He's good at his job. Good enough that most investigators would never spot the manipulation. But you spotted it? I've been watching Haynes for 3 years, waiting for him to make a mistake big enough to expose. You're that mistake. Darius felt a chill run down his spine. You're not just trying to save me, you're using me. I'm trying to do both. Her gaze held steady. You survive. Haynes goes down. David gets justice even if it's 8 years too late. The room fell silent as Darius processed the full scope of what she was proposing. This was not a simple act of kindness. It was a chess game that had been in motion long before he became a piece on the board. What do you need from me? Evidence. There's a recording of a conversation between Haynes and Derek that took place 2 weeks ago. It's stored on a private server that only Derek can access. I've already planted a metadata tracer in the system. If anyone tries to delete that file, the tracer will capture everything. The time, the location, the credentials used. You want them to destroy the evidence. I want them to think they've won. Overconfidence makes people sloppy. And if I get caught, then we both lose everything. Darius thought about Maddox, about the letter he might have to write if this went wrong, about his own father, a man who had worked himself to death in a factory that never knew his name, crushed by a system that treated people like him as expendable parts. I'm in. The next day, Darius and Kara argued. It happened in the storage room, voices kept low, but tension running high. She had proposed using Derek's family as leverage, threatening to expose his involvement in a way that would destroy not just his career, but his marriage, his children's futures. Derek has 2 kids. Darius set his jaw tight. You want to ruin their lives to save mine. Derek chose to be part of this. His children didn't choose to have a criminal for a father. And what about when they grow up asking why Daddy went to prison? How is that different from what Maddox would go through if I went down? Kara's expression flickered a crack in the certainty she wore like armor. It's different because you're innocent. Innocence doesn't matter to a 7-year-old who just lost his father. Darius stepped closer, his voice dropping. I won't become the thing I'm fighting against. Find another way. She stared at him for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes. Finally, she nodded. Another way, then. The plan began to unravel with 4 hours left on the clock. Darius arrived at work to find a message waiting in his inbox, a summons from Human Resources, for an interview regarding anomalies in your access records. The investigation had accelerated. Someone had pushed the timeline forward. He tried to contact Kara through their agreed-upon channels, but she did not respond. Her office sat empty when he passed by. Her car was missing from its usual spot in the executive parking level. By midnight, Darius had convinced himself of the worst. She had sold him out, used him as bait to draw Haynes's attention while she secured her own position. Everything she had told him about David, about wanting to help, about fighting back, had been an elaborate manipulation designed to keep him compliant while the trap closed around him. He found her in the archive corridor, exactly where they had spoken days before. You disappeared, he said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury, right when everything started falling apart. Kara's expression remained maddeningly calm. I had to make adjustments. The timeline changed. Adjustments. That's what you call it. He stepped closer, fists clenched at his sides. You gave me up, didn't you? You used me as bait and now you're cutting your losses. Darius, listen to me. No, I'm done listening. I should have known better than to trust anyone in this place, especially someone who already admitted she's been planning this for years. He turned to leave, but her next words stopped him cold. The recording is gone. Derek deleted it 6 hours ago, exactly like I planned. Darius spun back around. What are you talking about? The metadata tracer captured everything. When Derek erased the file, our tracer recorded the exact time, location, and credentials he used to access the system. The deletion happened from a terminal in Haynes's private office. Why didn't you tell me? Because your reaction had to be real. If you knew the plan, Derek would have seen through it. These people have survived this long because they can smell deception from a mile away. Darius stood frozen, caught between relief and rage. She had used him, manipulated his fear and anger to sell a performance he did not know he was giving. You could have trusted me. No, Kara said quietly. I couldn't. Not with stakes this high. But I'm trusting you now. The HR interview is in 6 hours. What happens next depends entirely on what you choose to do. She handed him a flash drive no larger than his thumbnail. Everything we've collected is on here. Financial records, metadata traces, communication logs. It's not enough to bring Haynes down completely. He has too many protections for that. But it's enough to clear your name and expose the cover-up. Darius stared at the device in his palm. Such a small thing to carry so much weight. And if this fails, then we both go down fighting, just like I promised. He drove home as the sky began to lighten, the flash drive burning a hole in his pocket. Maddox was still asleep when he arrived. Grandma Lorraine had left a note on the kitchen counter doctor's appointment back by noon. The apartment felt hollow without her steady presence, filled only with the soft sounds of a child's breathing from the bedroom down the hall. Darius sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a blank sheet of paper. He thought about his father. A man who had worked 2 jobs his entire adult life, who had never complained, who had died at 53 from a heart attack in a break room, surrounded by people who did not know his first name. He thought about Maddox, who still believed that standing up for yourself was enough to make problems disappear. He thought about Kara, who had spent 8 years carrying a grief she could never put down, waiting for a chance to make it mean something. And he began to write. Dear Maddox, if you're reading this, something went wrong. But I need you to know that everything I did, because I couldn't stand by and let them win. I couldn't let you grow up in a world where good people get destroyed just because they're convenient targets. You are the best thing I ever did. Remember that. Always. Love, Dad. He folded the letter and slipped it into an envelope marked with his son's name. Then he went to wait for dawn. The conference room on the 4th floor had been designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, flooding the space with cold morning light that left nowhere to hide. A long mahogany table dominated the center, surrounded by leather chairs occupied by faces Darius recognized but had never spoken to directly, the head of human resources, 2 members of the legal department, and a woman he assumed was an external investigator brought in to ensure objectivity. At the far end of the table sat Victor Haynes. The COO had positioned himself like a judge presiding over a verdict already decided. His expression carried the same practiced warmth from their encounter on the operations floor, but his eyes held something different now. Satisfaction. The quiet pleasure of a man watching his plans unfold exactly as intended. Mr. Coleman, the HR director began sliding a folder across the table. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure you understand the seriousness of these allegations. Darius kept his hands flat on the table, resisting the urge to touch the flash drive hidden in his jacket pocket. I understand you have questions. I'm here to answer them. The evidence is quite extensive. The external investigator spoke with clinical detachment, as if discussing weather patterns rather than a man's entire life. Emails sent from your account containing classified information. Access logs showing unauthorized entry into restricted servers. A pattern of activity that spans nearly 3 months. None of which I did. The digital forensics suggest otherwise. Darius felt the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on him. He thought about the letter sitting in his kitchen drawer, addressed to a 7-year-old boy who still believed his father could fix anything. Someone altered those records, he said, keeping his voice steady. Someone with the technical capability and the motivation to make me look guilty for something I didn't do. Victor Haynes leaned forward, his tone dripping with false concern. Mr. Coleman, I understand this must be difficult, but the evidence speaks for itself. Perhaps it would be easier for everyone if you simply... The conference room door opened. Kara Hartwell entered without knocking, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with a rhythm that commanded attention. She carried a laptop under one arm and wore an expression that betrayed nothing of what she was about to do. My apologies for the interruption, she said, though her tone suggested she was not sorry at all. I have information relevant to this investigation. The HR director frowned. Ms. Hartwell, this is a closed session. Whatever you have can wait until... It cannot wait. Kara set her laptop on the table and opened it, angling the screen so everyone could see. What I'm about to show you will fundamentally change the nature of this inquiry. Victor Haynes's expression flickered, the first crack in his composure. Kara, this is highly irregular. I'm sure whatever you found can be submitted through proper channels. Proper channels are exactly how evidence disappears in this company. She met his gaze without flinching. I think we both know that. The room fell silent. Even the external investigator seemed to sense that something had shifted in the atmosphere, though she could not yet identify what. Kara pressed a key, and the screen filled with data, timestamps, server access logs, deletion records, financial transactions. The same evidence she had shown Darius in the storage room now displayed for everyone to see. 3 days ago, a file was deleted from a private server accessible only to senior IT personnel. That file contained a recording of a conversation discussing the fabrication of evidence against Mr. Coleman. This is absurd, Haynes interrupted, his voice rising. You're making accusations without any... I'm not finished. Kara's tone cut through his objection like a blade. The deletion itself was captured by a metadata tracer embedded in the system. The tracer recorded the exact time, location, and credentials used to erase the file. Those credentials belonged to Derek Mullins, and the access originated from a terminal in Mr. Haynes's private office. She turned to the external investigator. I also have financial records showing a series of offshore transfers totaling over $2 million made from accounts linked to Mr. Haynes in the weeks following the original data breach. The same breach that Mr. Coleman is being accused of orchestrating? The room erupted. The HR director demanded explanations. The legal team exchanged panicked glances. Victor Haynes rose from his chair, his face contorted with rage that he could no longer contain. This is a setup, he snarled. She's been planning this for years. Everyone knows she has a vendetta against this company. I have a vendetta against people who destroy innocent lives to cover their own crimes. Kara did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She looked directly at Haynes. The people who trained you used the same playbook at Axiom Dynamics, same methods, same assumption that no one would ever look closely enough to see the truth. But I did, and now everyone in this room does too. Haynes opened his mouth to respond, but the external investigator spoke first. Mr. Haynes, I think it would be best if you didn't say anything further without legal counsel present. She turned to the HR director. I'm recommending an immediate suspension of this investigation pending a full review of Ms. Hartwell's evidence. Mr. Coleman should be placed on administrative leave with pay until the matter is resolved. Administrative leave. Darius spoke for the first time since Kara entered. I didn't do anything wrong. I understand that, Mr. Coleman, but protocol requires let him stay. Kara's voice carried an authority that surprised even herself. "He's not the one who should be leaving this room." The HR director hesitated, caught between procedure and the undeniable weight of what had just been revealed. Finally, she nodded. "Mr. Haynes, I'm going to have to ask you to step out. Security will escort you to your office while we determine next steps." Victor Haynes stood frozen for a long moment, his eyes moving between Kara and Darius with a hatred that promised this was not over. Then he straightened his tie, smoothed his jacket, and walked toward the door with the measured steps of a man who still believed he could salvage something from the wreckage. He stopped beside Kara, close enough that only she could hear his final words. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've started." Then he was gone. The weeks that followed moved